The faint hum of the ceiling fan was the only sound that filled the small kitchen that night. Its slow, rhythmic creak matched the heartbeat of the house. A house that used to be alive with laughter, humming melodies and the scent of adobo simmering on the stove, but now silence had taken residence. 16-year-old Isabella de la Cruz sat at the dinner table, her fork tracing slow circles in her untouched rice. The chair across from her remained empty, a quiet, constant reminder of what was gone. Her mother's chair. A single framed photo sat at the edge of the table. It was her and her mother, both smiling, their foreheads touching, captured on the day Isabella had won her school's singing contest. Her mom's eyes were proud, full of warmth and love, as if she already saw a future her daughter could not yet imagine, but that future had been interrupted. Outside, the night sounds of Quezon City drifted in, jeepneys rumbling past, dogs barking in the alley, laughter echoing from a nearby sari-sari store. Life went on around her, but inside this house, everything had stopped the day her mother took her last breath. Isabella swallowed hard and whispered to the photo, "I sang today, Ma. The same song you like, the one about finding home." Her voice trembled, half sung, half sobbed, but it didn't feel the same without you listening. The flickering light above her buzzed softly, and for a second, it almost felt like her mother's presence, a small flicker of comfort. But the moment passed, leaving her in the dull glow of reality. She stood up, carried her plate to the sink, and rinsed it absent-mindedly. The water ran over her hands, warm but numbing. Her eyes caught the small note pinned to the refrigerator. Her mother's handwriting, still neat and graceful despite the tremor she had near the end. "Anak, never stop singing. Even when life hurts. Especially when it hurts." Isabella touched the note with her fingertips, tracing the ink like it was something sacred. "I'm trying, Ma," she whispered, "but it's hard." Her mother, Maria de la Cruz, had been a local music teacher, gentle, patient, and loved by everyone in their barangay. When Maria got sick, the neighbors brought food donations and prayers. But hospital bills grew faster than hope, and one morning, Isabella found herself singing lullabies beside a hospital bed instead of a stage. That final night, Maria had reached for her daughter's hand and whispered weakly, "When you sing, promise me you'll make people feel loved, not just entertained. That's what music is for." Those words had become a seed planted deep in Isabella's heart, one that hurt and healed her all at once. Now each day after school Isabella worked part-time at a local cafe, singing softly during closing time when the customers were gone. The owner, an older man named Tito Raymond, never said much but always left a small tip in her jar labeled, "For Mama." One night as she wiped down the counter he said quietly, "You know, your mom used to sing here when she was your age. She had that same light in her eyes, that same fire." Isabella smiled faintly. "It's not fire anymore, Tito. It feels more like smoke." He placed a hand on her shoulder. "Then sing until the fire returns." That night, back home, she sat by the window with her old guitar. The same one her mother had used to teach her chords when she was just 7. The instrument was worn, a crack on its side held together by clear tape, but it was her most treasured possession. She began to strum a gentle melody, her fingers trembling at first. Her voice was soft, unsure, but then it found its rhythm. The same lullaby her mother sang every night. "When the stars forget to shine, I'll be your light, my child divine." As she sang, tears fell freely. Her voice filled the small room, rising past the walls, out into the night. It was the kind of song that didn't ask to be perfect, only to be real. Across the narrow street, an elderly neighbor paused outside her gate, listening. She closed her eyes and whispered a prayer for the girl who sang through her pain. Inside, Isabella finished the song and looked at the ceiling. "I miss you, Ma. I wish you were here to tell me if I'm still any good." A gentle breeze drifted through the open window, rustling the curtains and lifting the photo on the table just enough for it to tilt toward her, as if her mother was leaning in again, smiling. For the first time in weeks, Isabella smiled back. Later that night, as the city lights flickered outside her window, she sat with her small notebook, her dream book. On its cover, she had written in blue ink, "One day, I'll sing where the whole world can hear Mom's song." She didn't know when or how, it felt impossible, a fantasy for someone richer, braver, more connected. She was just a high school student from Quezon City, with no savings, no fancy clothes, and no mother to guide her. But still, she wrote another line beneath it, "Because dreams don't die. Not when they're made of love." She closed the notebook, tucked it under her pillow, and whispered a quiet prayer. "Lord, if you ever give me a chance to sing for her again, I promise I'll make her proud." Outside, the moon peeked through the clouds, bathing the room in soft silver light. It landed perfectly on the empty chair at the dinner table, and for that fleeting moment, it didn't look so empty anymore. That night, Isabella dreamed of a stage filled with lights. She stood at the center, her mother's voice echoing softly from the crowd, "Sing, Anak. The world needs your song." When she woke the next morning her pillow was damp with tears, but her heart felt lighter. The grief was still there. It always would be. But it had started to change shape. It was no longer something that held her back. It was something that pushed her forward. And though she didn't know it yet, her mother's dream for her was about to take flight in a way neither of them could have imagined. Across oceans, cameras, and hearts. The empty chair had been the start of something beautiful. The morning sun streamed through the window, painting golden light on the cracked walls of Isabella's small bedroom. She woke to the faint sound of a rooster crowing in the alley and the smell of pandezel from a street vendor below. It was another ordinary day, or so she thought. Her alarm buzzed on her worn-out phone. 6:00 a.m. She stretched and stared at the small cross hanging above her bed. Beside it, her mother's photo smiled back, eternal and calm. "Good morning, Ma," she whispered, pressing her palms together in a quiet prayer. "Help me get through another day." She got ready for school quickly. Simple white blouse, faded skirt, her long black hair tied back with a blue ribbon. The same ribbon her mother used to braid into her hair every morning. As she laced her shoes, she hummed softly, letting the melody comfort her like an old friend. When she stepped out into the street, Cuisance buzzing by, vendors calling out prices, kids in uniform running late for class. Life moved fast, but Isabella always walked slowly, savoring every sound. Each hunk, each chatter, each smell reminded her of the place her mother had called home. She arrived at the cafe after school, her apron tied neatly over her uniform. It was a cozy place. A small shop with flickering fairy lights and old posters of famous singers on the walls. The owner, Tito Raman, waved from behind the counter. "Bella, my best singer has arrived," he said with a grin. "The guitar's waiting. Maybe sing one before we close later, ha?" She smiled. "Of course, Tito. I'll make sure the coffee cups dance." He chuckled. "That's the spirit. Your mom would be proud." Those words always hit her heart like a soft ache. Proud. It was the one thing she still wished she could hear from her mother's own lips. As the day passed, Isabella served tables, washed dishes, and sang quietly as she cleaned. It was her way of breathing. Her voice wasn't just beautiful, it was pure emotion. Even when she didn't mean to, she made people stop and listen. By evening, only a few customers remained. A woman in her 40s sat by the window, tapping her phone. A young man worked on his laptop. And then, the door opened. A foreign woman entered, tall, blonde, wearing a navy blue dress and a lanyard around her neck that read, "Talent Reach Foundation." She smiled warmly at Tito Raymond before glancing at Isabella. "Good evening," she said. "I'm looking for a girl named Isabella Dela Cruz." Isabella froze, mid-wipe. "That's me," she said softly, unsure. The woman's eyes lit up. "Perfect. My name's Marissa Blake. I work with a non-profit that partners with America's Got Talent. We're here in Manila looking for young, undiscovered talent to sponsor for the next season." Isabella blinked, confused. "Wait, America's Got Talent, the real one, the one with Simon Cowell?" Marissa laughed gently. "Yes, the real one. We've seen your videos online. The one where you sing Heal the World for your mother. It's been shared thousands of times." Isabella's jaw fell open. She remembered posting that video a year ago. Shaky camera, bad lighting. Just her and her guitar. She hadn't even checked the views since. I didn't think anyone was watching." "They were," Marissa said kindly. "And we'd like to give you a chance to audition in Los Angeles. Everything, your flight, your visa, accommodations, will be taken care of." For a moment, Isabella just stood there silent. The cafe faded away, and all she could hear was her heartbeat. This has to be a joke," she murmured. "I can't go to America. I've never even been on a plane." Tito Raymond stepped forward, his face breaking into a wide grin. "It's not a joke, Bella. This is your sign, your mom's sign." The tears filled her eyes. "But why me? There are so many better singers." Marissa shook her head. "Because your story has heart. You sing from somewhere most people can't reach, from love, from loss. That's what touches the world." That night, after closing the cafe, Isabella sat alone on the steps outside. The city lights twinkled like scattered diamonds, and in her hand was the letter, an official invitation from America's Got Talent. The paper trembled in her fingers. She whispered, "Ma, do you see this? They want me to sing on TV, in front of the world." She felt a tear slide down her cheek, warm and gentle. "But what if I fail? What if I'm not good enough?" A soft breeze blew through, brushing against her hair, and somewhere deep inside, she heard her mother's voice again, calm and sure. "Anak, when you sing, don't think about being good enough. Just tell your truth." She smiled through the tears. "Okay, Ma, I'll tell our truth." 2 weeks later, Isabella stood at Ninoy Aquino International Airport, holding her passport and a single backpack. Her entire life was packed into it. One set of clothes, her guitar, her mother's rosary, and the dream they had shared. Her neighbors had gathered to say goodbye. Tito Raymond handed her a small envelope. "For snacks," he said with a wink. "Or for courage." She hugged him tightly. "Thank you, Tito, for believing in me when I didn't." He patted her back. "Go make the world listen, Bella. Make your mama proud." At the gate, she paused and looked back one last time. Manila shimmered in the morning sun, noisy and beautiful. The smell of rain and coffee filled the air. She whispered, "I'll be back, Ma, with your song in my heart." Then she stepped through security, the sound of her flip-flops echoing on the floor, each step a mix of fear and faith. On the plane Isabella sat by the window, staring at the clouds. The stewardess smiled at her. First time Fallon nodded. "Yes, Po. I'm going to America." "That's wonderful," the woman said kindly. "Are you visiting family?" Isabella hesitated, then smiled softly. "Yes, my mother's waiting for me, just in a different way." The woman didn't understand, but she smiled anyway and placed a blanket over Isabella's shoulders. As the plane lifted off the ground, Isabella pressed her forehead against the glass, watching the Philippines grow smaller and smaller until it disappeared beneath the clouds. She clutched the rosary in her hand and whispered, "I'm flying, Ma. You always said my voice could take me places. I guess you were right." For the first time in a long time, Isabella felt something she hadn't felt since her mother passed. Hope, not the fragile kind that flickers and fades, but the kind that soars, somewhere high above the Pacific Ocean. A quiet girl from Quezon City began to believe that maybe, just maybe, her mother's dream was finally about to come true. The lights inside the Pasadena Civic Auditorium were brighter than anything Isabella had ever seen. They weren't just lights, they were stars, burning above her, around her, on her, as if the universe itself had decided to watch. Backstage she sat in a folding chair, clutching her guitar, her hands trembling. She could hear muffled roars from the audience, laughter, applause, cheers. Every sound made her heart pound faster. Beside her stood Marissa, the foundation manager who had brought her from Manila. "You okay, sweetheart?" she asked softly. Isabella nodded. Po, her throat was dry.
"Yes, Po,"
she said, slipping unconsciously into Tagalog. Then she caught herself. "I mean yes, ma'am." Marissa smiled. "Don't be nervous. Just do what you do best. Sing with your heart." Isabella nodded again, but she couldn't stop her hands from shaking. Her mother's rosary hung around her wrist, the tiny cross pressing gently into her skin. "Sing from love and act," her mother's voice echoed in her memory. "Not fear." A stagehand waved at her. "You're up next." Her breath caught. Next. That word felt huge, final, like standing at the edge of a mountain. From the wings she peeked out. The sight almost took her breath away. Thousands of faces, cameras flashing, an ocean of light stretching beyond the edge of the stage. And there, at the judges' table, sat Simon Cowell, Sofia Vergara, Heidi Klum and Howie Mandel, 4 people she had only ever seen on TV. "Now, ladies and gentlemen," the host announced, "please welcome from the Philippines, 16-year-old Isabella de la Cruz." A polite applause rippled through the room as Isabella stepped into the light. Her heart pounded so loud she could barely hear anything else. She walked slowly, clutching her guitar, her small frame almost swallowed by the size of the stage. The spotlight followed her, and as it did, something inside her whispered, "You're not alone. She's with you." She stopped at center stage. Simon leaned forward. "Hello there. What's your name?" "Isabella de la Cruz," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "Where are you from?" "I'm from Quezon City, Philippines." The audience cheered. A few Filipinos in the crowd waved tiny flags. Isabella smiled shyly. Simon nodded. "Welcome, Isabella. What brings you here tonight?" She hesitated, fingers tightening around her guitar. I lost my mom last year," she began softly. "She used to be a music teacher. She always told me that music can heal people, even when your heart is breaking. So I came here to sing for her." A hush fell over the audience. Even Simon's expression softened. "That's beautiful," he said quietly. "What will you be singing for us?" She swallowed hard. "A song I wrote. It's called Heaven Hears." The lights dimmed. The audience stilled. She sat on the stool at center stage, adjusted her microphone, and gently strummed her guitar. At first her hands trembled so badly that the chords came out uneven. A few people shifted in their seats. Simon tilted his head. The kind of look that could crush a performer's confidence in an instant. Panic flooded her chest. "Oh no, I'm failing. I'm really failing." But then, she closed her eyes. In that darkness she saw her mother again, sitting in their small kitchen, smiling from her favorite chair, saying, "Even when life hurts Anak, keep singing." She took a deep breath, and then she sang. "I thought goodbye meant forever, but I still hear your song at night. In the silence between heartbeats, you remind me love never dies." Her voice was soft, trembling, then it began to rise smooth and pure, carrying a weight of emotion so deep it silenced the entire auditorium. Every note was a piece of her heart, every lyric a prayer sent upward. The camera zoomed in on Simon's face, his eyes wide, his lips pressed together. Heidi wiped a tear. A mother in the audience covered her mouth, sobbing quietly. "If heaven hears, then let her know. I'm singing still, I'm standing tall. Every melody, every tear is me saying, I miss you, Ma." By the second chorus, the audience was utterly still. No coughs, no whispers, only her voice, fragile yet unbreakable. The final line came out as a whisper. "And when my song is done I'll know, Haven heard me after all." The note lingered, pure, haunting. suspended in the air silence. The entire theater stood frozen for a moment, as if afraid to breathe and break the spell. Then, like a wave crashing all at once, applause. Thunderous, uncontrollable. People rose to their feet. Some cried openly. Others clapped until their hands stung. Isabella looked up, tears streaming down her face. She couldn't believe what she was seeing. The judges, all 4 of them, were standing. Simon Cowell was the last to rise. He clapped slowly at first, then stepped forward, his expression unreadable. When the crowd finally quieted, he spoke, his voice softer than usual. "Isabella, that wasn't just a performance," he said. "That was love, that was grief, beauty, and hope, all in one song. I've been judging for a long time, but I don't think I've ever heard something so personal, so real." The audience cheered again. Isabella covered her face, overwhelmed. Howie leaned in. "You made us feel something tonight. That's what music is supposed to do." Sophia wiped a tear. "Your mom would be so proud of you." Heidi smiled through glistening eyes. "That was angelic, Isabella. Just beautiful." Simon nodded. "You came here in honor of your mother, but tonight, you honored everyone who's ever lost someone they love. You have a gift, young lady." He pressed the button on the table. The golden buzzer. The theater exploded in sound. Golden confetti shot into the air, raining down in a storm of glitter. Isabella gasped as the lights turned golden around her, the stage shimmering like heaven itself. Marissa, watching from backstage, covered her mouth in shock, tears spilling down her cheeks. Isabella dropped to her knees, sobbing, her guitar still in her lap. She looked upward, whispering, "Ma, this is for you." As the confetti continued to fall, the cameras captured something unforgettable. A girl from Quezon City, shining beneath a shower of gold, her tears mixing with her smile, her voice still echoing in the hearts of everyone who heard it. And somewhere in that crowd, you could almost feel another presence. Unseen, but strong. The warmth of a mother's pride, the peace of a promise fulfilled. For Isabella, this wasn't just a performance, it was a conversation between heaven and earth. And for the first time since her mother's passing, she didn't feel alone anymore. The brightest lights had shown her the truth. Her pain wasn't a cage. It was the bridge that carried her song to the world. The sound of the golden buzzer still echoed in Isabella's ears like a dream that hadn't quite sunk in. Gold confetti shimmered in the air, spiraling down like tiny stars. For a moment, everything slowed, the cheers faded, the lights softened, and she stood in the middle of it all, her eyes lifted toward the heavens. She couldn't see her mother, but she could feel her. In every golden fleck that brushed her skin, in every tremor of her heartbeat. "Ma," she whispered under her breath, voice trembling, "we did it." The music faded out, but the energy in the auditorium didn't. It felt sacred, like everyone was holding on to something fragile and beautiful that they didn't want to let go of. The host, Terry Crews, walked out on stage, smiling wide, his own eyes glassy. He lifted Isabella's hand high. "Ladies and gentlemen, Isabella de la Cruz from the Philippines." The crowd erupted again. "Chants of Bella! Bella!" filled the room. But Isabella just stood there, stunned, shaking her head as tears kept falling. She didn't know whether to laugh or cry, so she did both. Her hands trembled as she touched the rosary wrapped around her wrist. "This is for you, Ma," she mouthed. Back at the judges' table, the moment still hung in the air. Simon Cowell leaned back in his chair, uncharacteristically quiet. His usual cool demeanor was replaced by something softer, the kind of look that comes from being deeply moved. He finally spoke into his microphone, voice steady but emotional. "You know, Isabella, we hear a lot of singers on this stage, thousands, some have perfect voices. But you sang with truth. You sang with the kind of emotion that reminds people why music matters. That's not something you can fake." The audience nodded, many still wiping tears. He paused, taking a breath before continuing. "When you said you were singing for your mother, I thought I'd hear a sad song. But what you did wasn't sad at all. It was healing." He turned to the others. "I don't usually say this, but that performance, it changed the atmosphere in this room. I felt it." Sofia Vergara nodded, dabbing her eyes with a tissue. "I lost my brother when I was young," she said quietly, "and when you sang it was like I could feel him again. Thank you, Isabella. You reminded me that love never dies." Howie leaned forward, his usual humor replaced with awe. "You didn't just sing to us, you sang through us. You let us feel something that's universal, loss, love, and the hope that those we miss are still listening." Heidi smiled warmly. "Your mom must be the proudest angel in heaven right now." The crowd broke into applause again, a gentle one this time, not loud or explosive, but reverent. It wasn't just appreciation, it was connection. As Isabella stepped off stage, the noise of the audience began to fade, replaced by the quiet hum of backstage chaos. Producers, camera operators, crew members rushing about. But amid it all, people kept stopping to hug her. A lighting technician whispered, "I lost my dad last year. Your song made me feel like he was right here." A makeup artist with trembling hands said, "That was the most beautiful thing I've ever heard. You reminded me why I love this job." Even a janitor who'd been sweeping near the exit stopped, looked at her with misty eyes, and said, "You made us all remember someone we love. Thank you, Hija." Isabella couldn't stop crying. She hugged each one of them, whispering Salamat po, thank you, through tears. When she finally reached Marissa backstage, the woman was waiting with open arms. They embraced tightly. "You did it, Isabella," Marissa whispered. "You did it." Isabella shook her head, her voice barely audible. "We did it, me, you and Mama." Later that evening, long after the show had ended, the theater was empty. The confetti had been swept away, the lights dimmed, but Isabella stayed behind, sitting quietly on the stage steps with her guitar beside her. She looked out at the empty seats, the same ones that had held thousands of faces hours earlier. It was hard to believe that the moment had actually happened. The silence felt different now, not lonely, peaceful. She remembered something her mother had once told her while they were washing dishes together. When people hear a song that comes from your soul and act, they don't just listen, they heal. That's what God made music for. Isabella smiled softly, whispering to the empty theater, "You were right again, Mai." She took her guitar, plucked a soft note, and began humming quietly, not for the cameras, not for the judges, just for herself. A few stage crew members stopped in their tracks, standing still, listening. The melody was wordless this time, but it carried the same warmth, a sound like forgiveness and love intertwined. Meanwhile, across the world, her performance was already spreading like wildfire. Within hours, the America's Got Talent social media pages posted her video. The title, "Filipina Teen Brings Simon Cowell to Tears with Heartfelt Tribute to Her Late Mother." The comments poured in from around the globe. "I don't even know her, but I'm crying. I lost my mom last year too. This song healed something in me. The world needed to hear this voice. I called my mom after watching this. Thank you, Isabella." In just one night, her name, Isabella Dela Cruz, became a symbol of hope. News outlets called her the girl who made heaven sing. But Isabella didn't know any of that yet. She was still backstage, sitting in a corner, holding her rosary. She whispered a small prayer of gratitude. "Lord, I thought I was too small for this world, but you showed me that love, even from a little place like ours, can reach anywhere." Her tears fell onto her hands, but this time, they weren't tears of grief. They were tears of release, of peace. She finally understood what her mother had meant all along. Music wasn't about fame or applause. It was about connection, one soul reaching another. When she finally left the theater that night, the Los Angeles sky was dark and calm. Stars glittered faintly above, and the cool breeze brushed against her cheeks. She looked up at the heavens, smiling. "I hope you heard me, Ma. I hope you liked it." And for just a second, a single shooting star streaked across the sky, bright, fleeting, and beautiful. She gasped softly, her heart swelling. "You did hear me," she whispered. It was the kind of silence that didn't need words, because it was filled with love. That night, as Isabella walked back toward the hotel with Marissa, she carried no trophy, no money, no grand promise of fame. But she carried something far more powerful, the knowledge that her song had touched hearts across oceans. And though her mother's chair at home would always remain empty, Isabella had filled the world with her mother's presence again. One note, one tear, one heartbeat at a time. The silence after her last note was not the end of her song. It was the beginning of her story. The world outside the stage was spinning. Isabella could hear the thundering applause echoing in her ears long after she stepped behind the thick velvet curtain. Her heart was still pounding, but not from fear anymore, from the kind of joy that makes your knees weak, your eyes wet, and your soul feel like it's floating somewhere between heaven and earth. Backstage, producers and crew members surrounded her. Some were clapping, others simply staring, visibly emotional. One woman with a headset pressed her hand to her heart and whispered, "You made everyone cry out there." Even Simon. Isabella blinked, trying to process the words. Simon Cowell, the man whose eyes could cut through the toughest performers, had been moved to tears. That thought alone made her chest tighten with disbelief. She wasn't used to people reacting like that. Back home in Quezon City, she'd sung for her neighbors, for churchgoers, and sometimes to her mom while they washed clothes together. But this was the world watching. She walked toward the small dressing room they'd given her. The mirror lights shimmered softly, reflecting the tiny cross she wore around her neck. She reached up, fingers trembling, and held the rosary that once belonged to her mother. The cool beads pressed against her skin like a heartbeat, steady, comforting, eternal. "Ma," she whispered under her breath, "did you hear them?" Her voice cracked and tears began to fall again, slow and silent. "They stood up for me, Ma, just like you said they would if I sang from my heart." A gentle knock came at the door. When she turned, a producer with kind eyes stepped inside, holding a phone. "Isabella," she said softly, "I think you should see this." The screen showed the America's Got Talent YouTube channel. Her audition had just been uploaded minutes ago. But it already had 1 million views. Comments were flooding in by the second. "This girl made me call my mom just to say I love her. I'm not even Filipino but I'm crying like I lost someone too." Simon was speechless. This is pure, raw emotion. Isabella covered her mouth overwhelmed. 1 million, she whispered. "But it's only been 10 minutes. The producer smiled. "The world heard you, sweetheart. They didn't just hear a song. They heard your heart." The words hit her deeply. She thought about her mother again. How she'd always said music was a kind of prayer, that singing wasn't about impressing people but touching souls. "Music is kindness in sound and act," her mom once said, "and when you sing you give people a piece of yourself." And now, halfway across the world, her mother's lesson was alive again, not just in a theater full of strangers but in millions of homes. She sat down clutching her rosary tighter. "Ma," she whispered, looking upward, "you were right, love doesn't end, it just changes its song." A few minutes later, a young Filipino-American stagehand entered shyly, holding his phone. "Miss Isabella, I just wanted to say your song reminded me of my own mom. I haven't talked to her in 2 years. I think I'm gonna call her tonight." Isabella smiled through her tears. "Then that means my mom's still working," she said softly. "Through me." The young man laughed nervously, wiping his eyes. "You're something special, don't forget that." She nodded, her voice steadying as a new strength began to rise inside her. For so long, her mother's death had felt like a wound that wouldn't close, a silence that echoed in every corner of her life. But now, she realized it wasn't silence at all. It was a space waiting to be filled with meaning. Later that night, she sat alone in her small hotel room. The city lights of Los Angeles shimmered through the window, and somewhere far below, cars moved like rivers of gold. She opened her mother's old notebook, the one filled with recipes, doodles, and a few handwritten lullabies. On the last page, her mother had written, "If you ever lose me, sing. That's how I'll find you again." Isabella closed her eyes and let the words sink into her heart. "You found me, Ma," she whispered. Her phone buzzed again. Notifications piling in, messages from strangers around the world. "Your song saved me tonight. I lost my dad last month. You helped me cry for the first time. Thank you for reminding us that love never dies." But she realized then that this moment wasn't about fame, or views, or even Simon Cowell's praise. It was about connection. The invisible thread that tied her pain to someone else's healing. So, when the AGT producers asked her the next day how she wanted to use her sudden platform, she didn't hesitate. "I want to dedicate my performance," she said, "to every child who's lost a parent, especially those back home in the Philippines. There are many who feel forgotten. I want to remind them that love doesn't leave us, it just takes on new forms." That week, a news story went viral about her. Filipina teen turns grief into global movement. Donations began pouring into a small foundation in Quezon City supporting orphaned and abandoned children. Isabella insisted every dollar go there. "If my voice can give them hope," she told the interviewer, "then my mom's song will keep singing." Months later she returned home. The same narrow streets, the same tricycle drivers calling out greetings, but something inside her had changed. She walked into her old house, where the air still carried the faint scent of her mother's cooking. On the table, the empty chair was still there. Isabella smiled softly. She didn't move it, she just placed a small photo frame beside it, a picture of her mom, and whispered, "We did it, Ma." Then she began to hum, the same lullaby her mother once sang. It wasn't sad anymore, it was a thank you. And as her voice drifted through the window, out into the busy streets of Quezon City, children playing nearby stopped to listen. One little girl looked up and said, "That song feels warm." Yes, Isabella thought, that's what her mother's love always felt like, warm, endless, alive. Her mother's chair might have remained empty, but her song, their song, had filled the world.